afternoon. I am absolutely delighted to introduce these two remarkable individuals. My name is Kristen Abrams. I'm the Chief Program Officer of the McCain Institute. These two really need no introduction, but I'm going to give you a brief taste of their remarkable careers first. Sheryl Sandberg is equal parts gender equality advocate and tech industry titan. She's led initiatives like Lean In, Option B, and the Dave Goldberg Scholarship Program. You all know her as Meta's former COO, where she grew the company from $150 million to over $110 billion in annual revenue, while at the same time championing workplace inclusivity. Her career spans Google, the US Treasury, McKinsey, and the World Bank. And most recently, she led the documentary Screams Before Silence about sexual violence on October 7th. This was not in the script, but I will give you a plug. You can get it on YouTube, so please check it out. I'm especially proud to also introduce the next speaker, as some of the McCain Institute's earliest work at Mrs. McCain's leadership was on democracy and women's participation in Congo. Dr. Denis Mukwege, an OBGYN, founded the Ponzi Hospital and Foundation in the DRC, which has treated over 80,000 survivors of sexual violence. In addition to his medical practice, his relentless advocacy against rape as a weapon of war earned him the Nobel Peace Prize in 2018, among many, many other prestigious awards. Please join me in welcoming Sheryl Sandberg and Denis Mukwege.
Thank you. I am beyond honored to share this stage with this man, and particularly happy that we're talking about this issue here, because as Dr. Mukwege and I were just discussing backstage, this is not a women's issue, this is a human issue. And this is not just a health issue. This is a geopolitical issue, and I think that is the conversation we are hoping to have with this esteemed audience today, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
So Dr. Mukwege, you have devoted your life to the fight against conflict-related sexual violence. You are still a practicing physician. You have treated over 80,000 survivors of sexual conflict in war. How do you get here? You've won the Nobel Prize, but you started as a physician. How did this start, and what motivated you to make this your life's work?
Thank you. I want to thank for giving me this opportunity to share this question that I found crucial, because sometimes when you are talking about sexual violence, you have the impression that it's a question of sex. It's not a question of sex. It's a crucial question. You said that it's even a geopolitical question. So I think we need really, I'm very happy to get this opportunity to talk about this question in front of all this public. And I want to thank Cynthia McCain. She was in Congo, and I know how she is committed for what is happening in Congo, where we have the crisis of Congo is a forgotten crisis. So to get the opportunity to talk about it, I'm so happy. Second, I want really to say that I was not, in my life, I was not really thinking that one day I could be dealing with this kind of question of sexual violence. But in 1999, when I created Ponzi Hospital, it was to fight against maternal mortality. But unfortunately, when I started this hospital, the first patient I treated at this hospital, she came because she was raped with extreme violence, and she was shot in her genitals. So for me, it was the first time to see this kind of horrible things happen to a woman. And I just got the impression that maybe it's just a madman who could do things like that. But after 3 months, I discovered that I received many stories who was the same, telling me that women were raped by a gang rape, and after to rape them, to destroy the genital. So I start to understand that it's really a new strategy in the war.
And why is that a new strategy in the war? Why use sexual violence as a weapon of war? And what impact does that have on communities?
Rape as a strategy of war is really a very effective weapon, because when women are raped, they are not the only victims. Of course, they have physical trauma. They come to the hospital with infection and so on, but we can see that most of them have a long-lasting trauma, and this is really destroying them, and just they don't have a capacity to work for themselves after to go through these terrible things. But also we can see that the husbands are also destroyed. I've seen many men after to witness their women rape in front of them. They are not able themselves to go on doing a normal work. It's a weapon because also economically it's destroying all the capacity of the local community to work for themselves, to destroy the social fabric. And when the population don't have social cohesion, capacity to organize themselves, so they are not able to work for themselves and produce. So I think using rape, it's a low-cost weapon, but very effective in destroying everything around the victims.
You and I were speaking backstage about how often conflict-related sexual violence happens during war. I was just in Israel looking at the horrible pictures of some of the violence we were just talking about. And this is happening right now. Right now, you and I were speaking about Sudan, Ukraine, Ethiopia, many others. Israel on October 7th. You actually said that you are now treating the grandchildren of survivors that you treated before. You've been doing this for 25 years, and you have now treated the grandchildren of original survivors. So this is multi-year, multi-conflict. What are the patterns that you see? What are the similarities between all of these seemingly different situations?
Yes, as you said, this harrowing truth of conflict-related sexual violence is a global issue. And this global issue is really destroying everything around. And I can say that there is no border. Sometimes we have this impression that it's happening far away of us, but there is no border. And my impression is now, I have this impression that today we can say that in all the conflict in the world, we have the use of sexual violence in conflict. In October 7, I was in Paris when I heard about what happened in Israel. And at this moment, they were not talking about rape, but I was sure that if they took hostage, something bad will happen to women. And today, we know that is happening everywhere in all conflict. And in Israel, in Gaza, it's happening on both sides. And I think that we need really to know that we have responsibility. And our responsibility is just to fight against sexual violence, to put an end on sexual violence, because it's destroying our common humanity in destroying women. We can't just take it like something that can happen without any consequence on the people who are doing it. We need really to be responsible for what is happening for women around the world. I was in Ukraine. I talk with women, even women in Korea, Colombia, in Africa, and you have the same stories, and people are destroyed for sometimes forever. I met women who were raped in the World War II. And what touched me is they were very old women, but talking about what happened to them 70 years after, they're still talking about it with the same emotion. So you could understand that all their life was completely destroyed by what happened 70 years before, and they could not talk about it. And one of them told me 10 years ago, I'm happy now. I feel that if I die now, I will die in a good condition because I got this opportunity to talk about what happened to me and to get someone who can hear about what happened to me. And this was 70 years before. So I think rape is not only an effective weapon, but it's destroying for long term, and the long and lasting trauma is one of really the result of this weapon.
Your point that it's a cheap weapon, right? And very effective means it's so difficult to think through how we stop this as a world. One of the things you did, and you still do, is you've championed a very different approach to treating the survivors. You've had a more holistic approach than others, and you've also worked hard to get that approach shared throughout the world. Can you talk about that approach?
Yeah, when we start to take care of victims of sexual violence, we start with a medical treatment. But it was clear that after 6 months, we discovered that our treatment was not enough. Women were coming again and again asking us, complaining for many kind of complaints that have nothing to do with what happened to them. So at this moment, we start to ask ourselves, we need to get more places in the hospital, but women don't want to leave the hospital because they are complaining for many things. And talking with other specialists, we found someone who helped us to support them psychologically. And this was the second pillar that we put on place at Panzi to support women. And just after a few months, we could discover that women, after to go through the medical treatment and the psychological support, women were enough strong to go back home. But the big problem was that in their community, they were excluded. So rejected by the husband, rejected by the community. So it was very hard for them to return in the community. So there we start to support them to get possibility to get a new skill for adults and for children. We're supporting them to go back to school and help them to complete their training in school. So with these 3 pillars, medical, psychological, and socioeconomical support, we could see really a big difference. And I still remember a group of ladies coming from a place called Shabunda in Congo. When they come at the hospital, they were so ashamed for what happened to them. They could not talk really freely. It was very hard for them. But after the treatment, we send them back in their village. But we give them the possibility to make soap. Because in the village, the only one way to get the soap was to get it by flat. So they start to make the soap in the village. And 6 months after, they sent me a soap and they said, we want you to wash your hands with this soap because now in our village, they're not calling us at all rape women. Now we have a new name. We are soap makers. And if someone don't really treat us with dignity, we can't sell to her our soap. So people are respecting us and now have a new status in the community. But when women start to feel that they have their place in the community, we saw that some of them start to come back and ask to request justice. And for the hospital, we are not a place to provide justice. So today we have lawyers who are making the file, and if it's needed, to help women to go to justice. And I can say that sometimes we have impression that justice is only for women the way to get a reparation or a way just to complain. But I can say that justice is in the process of the healing process of victims of sexual violence. To know that the community, to know that everyone accept and recognize that they are victims is very important in the process, the healing process. Because to be in the society where you are rejected because you are accused to do things that you are not responsible. Most of the time when women in Congo go to justice, they're just giving them a small paper read by the judge to say it was not your fault and we recognize that you were raped by. It's all. They don't give them any kind of reparation. But with this small paper, you can see that the life of women changed. So I think that it's very important for women to get justice, because justice is a way to recognize them as victims and to recognize that the society didn't protect them when the society should protect them. So with these 4 pillars, we are just providing to women. We have the impression that it's really for many women, after to go through this process, most of them, they are becoming activists, fighting not only for their right, but fighting also for the right of their children, the right of their family and the community. And I'm so surprised to see how women can be strong in fighting for the right after to go these terrible things. I treat some men. In our statistics, we have around 1% of men who are also victims of rape. And I can say that it's taking 100 times to treat a man than to treat a woman. And I have the impression that women, they have really a capacity to just give their life for others. So they have this capacity to say, it happened to me, but I still have children, I still have family, and I have to take care of them. So they can move forward very easily than when it happened to men. Men have the impression that everything is completely destroyed. So with these 4 pillars, we are really very happy to see what can happen to the victim of sexual violence.
It's an amazing thing to think about how comprehensive the approach has to be. And I have seen, and a lot of us here have seen, how it has replicated around the world. So this is a very important, proud of people who have real power and geopolitical power. What role does the US government, what role does the international community play in combating this violence and supporting survivors? What policies are most effective that this group and others should be championing?
Yeah, I think really, I thank a lot to give me this opportunity to talk in this audience with policymakers, because I think that the question of conflict-related sexual violence need really that we can wake up and just say, we can't let our communities to be, or humanity to be destroyed by this weapon. And I think that the US can play a big role in just fighting, combating sexual violence as a weapon of war. And for this, the first thing I think to do is really the political will. The US need really to get this political will. And this political will is to put this question of conflict-related sexual violence on the agenda, or the international agenda. And this must be not sporadically when we have, for example, rape in Ukraine, talk about it, and after forget it. No, I think that it must be systematically, because now we know, now we have information, we have evidence that in all wars, rape is happening. So we can't do it like we don't know. And we know also how effective rape is in destroying women and destroying communities. So I think that to get this political will is really to put this question on the agenda of the international agenda and put it systematically. So it can be discussed in all the discussions that we can get about war. I remember 15 years ago, I was invited at the Security Council to talk about rape. And the ambassador, the Russian ambassador, he said, why you have to talk about rape in the Security Council? But I can see now what was done since we get many resolutions about the peace and security in the Security Council, how things are moving. But it's not enough. Today we are asking, for example, to get a red line against the conflict-related sexual violence. So if someone uses rape in a conflict, the international community should be very strong in sanction and don't accept at all. We have some leaders who are using this weapon, and we still just giving them the red carpet. It's not acceptable. I think that we should be more responsible to say this is not acceptable. When you use rape in your country or against in the war, you should pay the consequence. This is one thing that for to do it, we need a political will. We need also the enforcement of law. We have many laws that are not implemented. And we have impression that to fight against impunity, the perpetrators are just have impression that there is no consequence in raping, in using rape as a weapon of war. And I think that the US can really play a big role in just enforcement of law, so international law. So when this happens, the international law must be respected and enforced. This can be done, and I think that we have the international law and international humanitarian law. Why this is not using when it comes to the sexual violence in conflict? The second thing that I think the US can do is to support financially and technically. In many places, when rape happens in conflict, we are talking a lot about other supports and not enough how to support women in the conflict. And we know today that the most victim of all the war are women and children. But you have impression that we are talking about women and children just after to talk about all other problems. And we know that if we don't take care of women and children in conflict, the consequence will be for generations. So we need really to prevent. And for this, I think that the United States can do a lot in supporting the grassroots movement of women in conflict, to support the health system, to support, for example, the holistic care that we are promoting, to support the equality of gender and things like that. I think that there is also the support, the technical support. I visit some countries where rape is used as a weapon of war. It's very difficult, for example, for victims to access to the services. Not because they don't, these services don't exist, but how to organize it, to get it technically that it can work to support women. And there I think that the United States have expertise, and this expertise can help many countries who are in a need. The third thing is diplomatic support. And there I think the US can do a lot as a country sitting on the Security Council. I think that we can see today that our charter of the UN is completely abandoned, and we have impression that the international law and humanitarian law don't exist at all. We have impression that the collective security that was created after the World War II is now completely out of use, because we have, for example, the Russia who are fighting against Ukraine, and they are sitting in the Security Council. I think that this is very dangerous, and the state can make a big difference in showing what should be done. I take the case of Congo. The war in Congo started in 1996. And after 30 years of war, of aggression, Congo it's clear, it's documented that Congo is under the aggression of Rwanda, but the state still supporting military a country who is accused to aggress another country. And I think that if we don't have a cohesion in the decision, diplomatic decision that are taken, it will mean that we are just destroying this understanding between countries, the Charter of the United Nations, and especially the international and humanitarian laws. We lose all his means. And for me, when I can see that a country who is accused to don't respect the integrity and the sovereignty of another country is still supported by the US, my big question is,
why?
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 Why? And I think that the US can really give an example, because if you don't do it now, maybe other country will just get this impression that everyone can do what he wants. But in this case, I think that we are destroying what was built for 80 years now.
I mean, it's so chilling. You said in this answer many times this is women and children. And one thing that's really hard to talk about, so this is a hard subject, you've put this on your stage, is we are not just talking about women here or even girls. We're talking about babies, right? 6-month-old girls. Imagine that. This can be rape of an infant. And so the political solutions you're talking about are so important when you think about the protection that child would need. So what are the most critical needs in the field right now? How can this group, this esteemed group, help in this work?
Yeah. I think what we are doing at Panzi Hospital, we still have a lot of need, even if we are treating 5 to 7 women per day. But now with what is happening in the North Kivu, with the province is just a neighbor of the province of South Kivu, we start to feel a big pressure on the hospital. Victims are coming from the north to our hospital. And today we have really a need to get a sustainable funding for the holistic care that we are giving to the patient and the care at the hospital. This is really needed. But also, we need the support to strengthen the justice, because if there is no justice, all this case will just go on coming to the hospital. And we are doing advocacy against rape as a weapon of war. I think it's very important to go on with this advocacy. And to do this advocacy, we need really to get a strong support from people who are here. When it comes to the Democratic Republic of Congo, the big need is to stop this war. I think that there are many possibilities to stop this war. I can remember in 2013, with only a telephone call, the president of the state stopped the M23. They were already in Goma. And the war, he stopped it by a telephone call. So my big question is now, on the ground, we have 7 million of internally displaced people around Goma. We have, at this moment, millions of women who are victims of rape. We have 25 million of Congolese, the quarter of the population, are starving. And at the beginning of this year, World Food Program did an appeal for 2,600,000,000 to support as a humanitarian support to the Congo. But at the end of April, they received only 16%. It means that they need now to choose who will get the support and who will just die, because 7 million without possibility to work, and if they don't have food, what will happen for them? I think that this crisis of Congo is a neglected crisis. The Norwegian Refugee Council ranked it as the first forgotten and neglected crisis in the world. And I think that for us really today, we need your voice. We need you to talk about this 25 million of people who are starving, and the World Food Program can't help them because they have only 16% of the money that they need to give them food. And this is really a big need for the Democratic Republic of Congo when it comes to the humanitarian situation. And of course, I think you are here. We have policymakers here. I said about a call did by your president to stop a war, but also I think that sometimes if people don't want to hear, sanctions can make a big difference. And I'm sure that this will not change anything when it comes to the geopolitics and the geostrategy in the region.
Well, thank you for your tireless advocacy, for recognizing the destructive power of sexual violence, for bringing such a holistic approach. It is a true honor for me to be here with you. And as I looked around the audience, I could see so many people just nodding in agreement, understanding how important the issues you work on We are all indebted to you for your life's work, and we are all here to support you as you continue this very, very, very critical fight. Everyone, please.